Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to learn about Community Spotlight Project grants. I'm recording the session. I'll be sending it to you later and to share it with folks who weren't able to come this morning. My name is Reagan Carlisle. I'm the Vice President for Education and Community Programs here at United Arts. And joining me today is my colleague, Julia Mastropalo. Here she is, just to kind of help with the chat and things. Also, captioning is available. So if you'd like captioning, go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, maybe click the More button and just say Enable Captions. I think you're all muted, but if you could keep yourself muted unless you're asking a question, that would make it easier for the recording to pick up and the captioning to pick up our voices. I'll stop about halfway through to take questions. You can put them in the chat as they occur to you, if that's helpful. And then halfway through, I'll try to answer them. And then at the end, there'll be plenty of time for me to answer questions as well. So let's get started. Okay, so today you are here to learn about Community Spotlight Project grants. But first, for those of you who are new to United Arts, I just want to kind of remind you all what we're about. So we're about supporting and increasing arts programming throughout Wake County. We have a number of programs that we administer ourselves called Artists in Schools, a summer internship program for future arts leaders, a mural program to put murals in our outlying municipalities in Wake County, a Piedmont Laureate program. We also have a number of grant opportunities, whether you are an individual artist. I think I see at least one individual artist recipient here today. Thank you for being here. Yay! Schools, grants for towns, and grants for nonprofit organizations, which is why we're here today to talk about grants for nonprofit organizations, specifically Community Spotlight Project grants. So this is the second year that we are offering this new grant program to the community. It exists to support innovative arts projects that feature or are led by historically marginalized, underfunded, or underrepresented communities. United Arts created this opportunity because we wanted a way to support cultural communities and diverse artists. We want to support intentionally putting a diverse body of artists into our Wake County community. And so this is the way that we're able to do that. To be eligible to apply, from the applicant perspective, you need to be a nonprofit organization with 501c3 tax exempt status. You need to have had at least 3 years of programming. All 3 of those years of programming don't necessarily have to be under your 501c3, but you need to have experience doing programming in Wake County. And then you also need to have already have experience working with historically marginalized, underfunded, or underrepresented communities. Collaborative projects are absolutely welcome, but a single organization that meets these 3 criteria has to be the one that serves as the official grant applicant. For the project, remember this is a project grant. So of course it needs to be arts related. We are the United Arts Council. It needs to take place in Wake County. It needs to take place between July of this year to June of next year. That's our fiscal year. So it can take place in any of those months. It should be compatible with your mission. We're not interested in you twisting yourself into some sort of knot to be eligible for this grant program. It should be compatible with your mission. And it needs to feature a majority of artists from historically marginalized, underfunded, or underrepresented communities. Remember, this is not about audiences. This is about participating artists. Examples of projects. These are all examples of projects that are that were funded in the year that we are in right now. So there was a performance by Michaela Taylor, the Korea Fest, Navyug's India Fest, an exhibit of contemporary art by Indigenous or Native people, the creation of an online registry to promote the work of artists with disabilities, the 7th annual Dragon Boat Festival. You'll notice that if you look at these, it could be performances, festivals, exhibit, Something different, like an online registry doesn't fit any of those, and yet it was still funded for this year. And some of you who received those grants are here today, so thank you for joining and being interested in applying again. This is not an exhaustive list of the types of programs that we can support. I just wanted to give you some examples of things for this year. Grant request amount, you can request between $1,000 and $10,000. And there is no matching requirement. So if your project costs $10,000, you can ask us for the full amount and you don't have to find any money on your own. That's what that no matching requirement means. If your project only costs $1,000, which is little, that would be kind of surprising, but maybe you're allowed to apply for a project that only costs $1,000, but somewhere in that range is what you're allowed to request. The grant can support, the funds can be used for project-related fees and contracts, maybe marketing or advertising, maybe supplies and materials, maybe space rental, any other project-related expense. And you can use up to 25% of the grant to cover administrative salaries to administer this project. I tried to make that an exhaustive list. Hopefully any expense related to your project that you can think of falls into one of these categories, especially the one that's called other project related expenses. Excuse me. What the grant cannot support: expenses that are not related to the project. I know that that's pretty obvious, but I just wanted to make sure to say it out loud. If the expense isn't related to your project, then please don't include it. Also, this is kind of different. Projects that have been previously included in mission support grant applications and awarded funding. So some of you have no idea what mission support grants are, so this doesn't pertain to you. Some of you might have applied for mission support grant. That's a different grant opportunity that United Arts has for general operating support. So you can't simply ask for something that if you're a mission support grant recipient, something that you already do and you're seeking an extra source of funding from us for the same thing. That is not appropriate for this grant category. Okay, let's take a moment. That was a lot of things. What kinds of questions are there? Julia, are there any questions in the chat yet?
Not yet. You're doing a great job.
So supportive. Are there any questions that are occurring to you guys? You can also unmute and ask me if that's easier for you. So far, there's plenty more to come.
Good morning, Reagan. Oh, excuse me. Good morning, Reagan. This is Angela Milton. How are you?
Hi there.
Okay, so let me see if I can fix this real quick here, and I will come on camera. Yeah, here we go. Hi, Julia. I was wondering, so if the event that we're doing requires us to have a ticket price, is that allowed?
Of course, of course. Yeah, if your event requires a ticket price, that's absolutely allowed, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's keep going then. Let's look at the application. Most people love to take a look. Let me stop sharing, and then I'm going to reshare. Hold on a second. Share screen, and this time I'm going to share the application, which looks like this one. Share. Okay, can you see something that at the top says 2023-24 Community Spotlight Project Grant Application? Okay, okay. Thank you, Curtis, for their SP. Okay, so we'll go at the top. Okay, so easy applicant name. Remember, you have to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization with state and federal tax exempt status with at least 3 years of programming. I put that all in there as a reminder to you. Your address, your city, your zip code. You don't have to be based in Wake County to do a project, to be eligible to receive a Community Spotlight Project Grant. So it's okay if you're not in Wake County for your mailing address. This is basic stuff: website, contact name, contact title, email address. I love to communicate via email for all my grants, so I have stuff in writing so I don't forget things. So this is important. Your federal tax ID number, that's in your 501c3 letter. If you have a UE number, this is a new thing everyone's doing, unique entity identifier. There's some descriptions here. It's assigned by sam.gov. If you do not have one, or if you've requested one but don't have it yet, just write that in there. This is not a deal breaker. This is if you already have one, I'd like to know what it is. Moving down, grant request. You can request between $1,000 and $10,000. Okay. Next sentence, or next question. Complete the following sentence. We are seeking funding to support. Now, just one sentence. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a convincing sentence of why you need some money. This is just so I can keep track of things. We are seeking funding to support an exhibit by Indigenous and Native people. We are seeking funding to support a performance by blah. We are seeking funding to support the 15th annual Korea Fest, whatever, just something nice and succinct so that we can keep you're making this easy for me so that I don't have to go through and dig out a sentence so I can remember which application you are moving forward. Okay, now we get into the narrative prompts. The first one should be relatively easy. It's your mission statement. Just paste that mission statement right on in there. If you're a nonprofit organization, you should have one. You can paste it right in. History and programming. Just give us a little context as to what your organization is about and how long you've been around. Kind of what do you do? This is also the best place to describe your history of working with historically marginalized, underfunded, or underrepresented communities. This is the place you just fold it right in because it's a part of your history. Project overview. Let me back up. You will know your own organization phenomenally well. The people serving on the panel may not. So this is your opportunity to give context to your project. And that's why this question is important for history and programming. You're not going to be judged if you're only 5 years old versus you're 25 years old. It's fine. We just want to understand how you fit into like what your own history is. Moving on to project overview. This is like the meat of it. What is your project? What are you doing? Like, what do you envision? If there are any collaborations or partnerships, this is a great place to fold those into. Now, how is this project innovative? I am toying with doing away with the word innovative because innovative, to define innovative, you must have context, right? So when I think of innovative for Community Spotlight project grants, I think what is innovative in the context of Wake County and what is innovative for the context of you in your organization. So if you can answer those two questions in this project overview, kind of give us context, that helps us understand. How is this project different from your normal programming? Now, let me clarify. That's really for mission support grantees. If you're not a mission support grantee, this could be your normal programming. And it still could be innovative because you're the only one of your kind in Wake County, or you're the only person who's doing this kind of work in Wake County, or whatever the case may be. So this project overview number 3 is the place to articulate that so that the panel understands. Location of grant activities. Okay, just where will it take place? Is this going to take place at the Raleigh Convention Center, someplace in Cary, in a field in the middle of Southeast Raleigh? Like, give us a sense of where this project would take place. Would it take place in a community center? What do you have a facility and it'll take place there? Help us understand. Now, I added a couple of extra questions here just because I'm trying to answer to one of our own funders. Is this a historic property older than 50 years or located in a historic district? Is the location included in the National Register of Historic Places? It doesn't have to be yes. You are not getting more or less credit for being an historic place or not. I want to know this up front so I don't have to figure out this information after the fact. So this is not help or hinder your application. We are curious. Let me clarify. And if you get funding and you answered yes, that your project is taking place in historic property, do not be confused when I reach out to you with more questions, because we have to report out to a different funder, one of our funders about that. So just don't be surprised. Moving on, project timeline. When is this going to take place? So remember, this project needs to take place sometime between July 1st and June 30th. But when, like, if you're doing a week-long camp or a series of workshops, when are those workshops planned to take place? If you have a festival, when will that take place? If you have an exhibit, is there a range of dates that'll take place? Just give us a sense of when the time. You may have already started planning this project. I don't know. I don't know. But you can specify and let us know. Community value. Tell us how your project fulfills a community need. Now, community means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and we're leaving it kind of open-ended on purpose. Is there a community need because there is you are the only organization offering this type of programming in Wake County, or is it because a particular cultural community needs to see traditional art forms in this way? Whatever the case may be, this is the place to put it. What will this project's impact be on the community it will serve? One of the reasons that we really want that all these projects are about featuring artists, diverse artists, is because we want residents of Wake County who are diverse to see themselves as artists, to be inspired, to want to understand that the arts are for everybody. That's why this project isn't about audiences, it's about the artists. So that's kind of what we're hoping the impact will be, but it really depends on your project as to which community you are impacting and in what way. And then finally, how will you know if your project was successful? Will it simply take place? Are you looking for a certain number of audiences? Are you looking for a certain like demographic of audiences? Are you looking for, it can be qualitative or quantitative? It's really up to you. Tell us, how will you know if your project is successful? Okay, that was 7 narrative prompts. No more writing. Now, if you can upload the bios of the people who be planning it, we're looking for, when we see that your staff, paid or not, but they're still your staff, have relevant experience and qualifications, it gives the panel confidence that this project will be able to be carried off successfully. So just bios. It doesn't have to be a full-on resume. It could be a paragraph, whatever is easiest for you to upload to give the panel context of who are the people making the decisions for this project. Okay, moving down to the budget. So notice it's a fillable form. The top part is about income. Right here, United Arts Spotlight Grant. If you're asking for 10,000, 10,000 should go there. If your project costs more than you are requesting from us, where are you thinking of getting the other money? It doesn't have to cost more than what you are requesting from us, but if it does, where are you getting the other funds? And then you scroll down the scroll bar, and then there are the expenses. Notice there are some personnel. Remember, it can't be more than 25% for personnel. If contracted services, marketing, advertising, supplies, space rental, equipment, accessibility, if it's a public program or not. And then if there's anything that's other, and then total. Okay, so you just fill it in. It'll auto sum at the bottom. Down here in the budget narrative, I found that it's always nice to give people a place to use some sentences to describe some numbers. Sometimes numbers describe themselves, and sometimes sentences are really helpful. So if you need to tell us anything about your budget, this budget narrative is the place to do it. If you put something under other for income or expenses, just tell us what it is in this area. That's a fine place. And please notice that this little red asterisk right here means that the question is required. So your application won't submit if anything with a little red star doesn't get answered. So even if you write NA, or the numbers speak for themselves, or I have nothing to add, or you'll need to type something into that blank so that the submittable system will know that you paid attention to that question. Okay, moving down to support materials. If you have the option, notice there's no red star here. You have the option of uploading support materials that help the panel understand what your project is about. If you've done your project before, you might have something. And if you haven't, you might not. But anything, excuse me, anything that kind of helps us understand your project or your organization, you can upload it here. Videos are great, but you may have materials to upload, letters of support. You don't have to upload all of these things. I would say if your project is brand new and you've never done this specific thing before, a letter of support might be really helpful from a partner in some way. So to give the panel the confidence that you've already started to establish relationships to bring this project to life. Not required, but an opportunity. Moving down, this is general nonprofit stuff. A list of your board members. If you have an advisory board, you can upload that too. And if you don't have to, but if you do, you think it makes your application stronger, by all means, upload it. A letter of your federal tax exemption. This should say letter of 501c3 federal tax exemption. And then financial statements from your most recently completed fiscal year. If you have an audit, upload it. But I know that only organizations of a certain size are going to have an audit, so that is definitely not required. If an audit is not available, then upload the following 3 items: a profit loss statement, a balance sheet, and a letter signed by 3 board members saying that they have reviewed the organization's financial records. And then from the most recently completed fiscal year, upload your IRS Form 990. If your expenses are small, is less than $25,000 or $50,000, it may just be a postcard. Hold on a second, I'm gonna cough a whole bunch. Hold on just a minute.
I'll use this moment to remind you all to put questions in the chat. There are 2 really good questions already there, so we'll get to those in a minute. But if anyone else has questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat.
Since we are at the end of the application, let's take those questions. Julia, what are they?
Sounds good. Really good questions. The first one, the question was asked back when you were talking about the bio. And it's, how do you want an applicant to relate to their fiscal sponsor? And I imagine that may affect several of the questions, but how would you like for them to detail that up in who they are? And then how would that trickle down to other elements of the application? I'll let you answer that one first.
That's a very good question. Because we hadn't really thought about using fiscal sponsors for this. We thought about, but if your collaborating partner is the 501c3 and it's a partnership. Okay. A couple things I'm thinking on the spot here. First of all, there should be a letter of support in your support materials that outline the way that collaborator or fiscal sponsor is working with you. Like, what is the nature of that collaboration? What do they look like? Okay, what was the other part of that question, Julia? In the bio?
The question came in when you were talking about the bio or the history of the organization. And so they were basically looking for, are you looking at from the start of when they started working with the fiscal sponsor, or are you looking for longer, a combination of both? But then as you went through the application, I could see several other areas where they may need to touch on that. The first you mentioned was the letter of support, but are there other places they should make sure to document that relationship for you?
Any place that makes sense to you. Like, if in the history, I'm really interested in the history of your organization, but you could fold in there, and we've been working with this partner for this long. You could also fold in, hold on, let me look at this first. Sorry for scrolling quickly. Project overview, or collaborations and partnerships. If they're your partner in the project that you're proposing and they have been for a while, this is a good place to fold that in.
So if I could, because I'm the one that asked that question, if you could scroll back up real quick, that would be great.
Where do you want me back up to?
Yep. All right. So right there. So, all right. So history and programming. If I have a fiscal sponsor, it wouldn't be one that I've worked with before. But I have history and programming, and obviously they would have to have it as well. So would I put both mine and theirs, or just theirs, or how that's what I'm trying to find out.
So yours is the most important. Because like, I want to know how long, let's just pretend you've done expired, hypothetically speaking. So fold that in there to say what that looks like. And then as kind of like an afterthought, you can say, we'll be working with blah, 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 who's been around for this long, doing this kind of work in in Wake County and has, you know, you could add it as an afterthought. But really, even though they would be the one accepting the funds, you're the one implementing the project. So as far as history, we want to know that you're the one that has the experience.
Understood. Thank you.
The next question is from Mary Beth, and it involves the panel. How the decisions are made. Is there a rubric? What exactly will the panel go through as they're looking at each of these applications?
I'm about to get into that. Are there any other questions related to the application itself?
Yeah.
From Commotion, we have that they received a grant for the 22-23 year. Would it be acceptable to apply for next year to expand the scope of the project they started this year?
Good question. First, your existing project would have to be complete. Like it would need to be done by June 30th before you could request funds. I mean, so you can request funds even if, but your current project needs to be done by June 30th. You can apply to expand the same project, but you would need to make a really compelling case to make it a competitive application. Like, how is it still innovative for your organization? What work is left to be done? How is it still adding how is the project adding value to the community? You would have to, that onus would be on you to make the compelling case.
Great. And it looks like we have a hand raised. Angela.
Yes, ma'am. It's me again. Okay, so I hit the button. Okay, down where you have the 990. Yes.
Almost. There you go.
Okay, so as you know, we are a church and we are 501c3, and we're not required to file a 990. Is there, I know we just checked yesterday again, but is there something else that we would be able to file? Oh, you're gonna have.
Angela, you're stumping me. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Okay, let me make a note.
No problem.
Okay, any more questions about the application before we flip back into the slides?
I don't see any in the chat, and I think Angela used a great tool. If anyone would rather raise their hand than put it in the chat, we'll keep an eye out for that as well moving forward.
Okay. Do you all see a screen that says the application? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay. Oh, what am I doing here? There we go. Okay, application review appointments. If you want to make a phone appointment with me to review some stuff or just have a conversation, you can do that. Yeah, I would prefer it between April 11th and April 24th. That's a 2-week span. And you can email me your stuff, a draft of your materials, and we can have a conversation about it, and I can give you advice if you would like. Okay, the evaluation review criteria, on to Mary Beth's question. So 3 different things. Community value is 40% of your score. Quality of project is 35% of your score, and ability to complete the project is 25% of the score. And I will talk about what each of these things means to United Arts. Okay, so community value, which is 40%. These are the questions that the panelists will be seeking to answer based on your application. Do you have a history of working with historically marginalized, underfunded, or underrepresented communities? Does your project specifically identify artistic, cultural, or educational value to the community being served? Does this project fulfill a community need? And then what will this project's impact be on the community and or the audience? If you know that the panelists are seeking answers to these questions, just make sure those answers are in the application. I mean, I'm pretty sure these questions are asked in each of those in different ways in the narrative prompts, but no, they're going to be looking around for these answers for community value. This is the most of the 3 criteria. This one is the most important. It is weighted the heaviest. Project quality. Is this project innovative or distinctive? And remember, innovative according to Wake County and you. In another community, maybe your project isn't that innovative, but we're looking at through the lens of Wake County and your organization. Is this project well planned with a reasonable timeline? Let's pretend that you want funding for a big festival and you want it to take place in August. And on the application, you say, we'll start planning in July. I think all the panelists would be like, you could not start planning a big festival 1 month before it happens. For those of you who do festivals, you know it's a year-round thing. So the panelists might be looking for clues like that about the timeline. Are the budget and marketing strategies reasonable? Marketing strategies are really dependent on the type of project you are proposing. Are the goals and proposed outcomes clearly defined? By proposed outcomes, remember one of the questions is how will you know if your project was successful? You get to tell us, but if your answer makes sense, then that's how they'll define your project quality. What collaborations or partnerships are in place to make this project impactful? And then what is the quality of the participating artists? The third and final at 25% is your ability to complete the project. This is about, does your organization have the capacity to do something like this? So some of you may have history doing something like this, so that speaks well. Some of this may be new, but you've done lots of other things very similar that will give the panel confidence that you could make this project come to fruition. Do you have staff with relevant experience? Some of you have paid staff and some of you don't, and that's okay. I've seen wildly successful events with both kinds of staff. But it's really about experience of those staff. Do you have committed leadership and a stable organization? Is the application itself accurate and complete? I tried to make all the required things required, so you can't submit it. So I'm trying to help you by making sure that you cannot submit an incomplete application. That is the goal. So those are the 3 evaluation criteria. I'm getting lots of questions about what makes a competitive application. Number 1, make sure that in the application, you provide strong, clear descriptions. You don't have to put in words for words' sake. You know, the panel will have to read all of these applications. And so just being clear and concise is really helpful. Don't assume that the panel knows you or your community, or just don't assume. You're teaching us through your application. Make sure you clearly depict a community need and show a direct correlation to how your project serves that need. Remember, United Arts created this grant opportunity because we want to support cultural communities and diverse artists. I find that when I keep in mind who is my audience, that helps me with a variety of things in life. So your audience is comprised of a panel that I'll talk about in a minute, that they've been tasked with picking projects that support cultural communities and diverse artists. This year, we're going to give priority to projects that feature artists of color and projects that feature artists with disabilities. There are plenty of other projects that will be competitive also, but know that this year we're leaning toward preferring those types this year. It doesn't mean that other groups are excluded. It really depends on who applies. And then for those of you who are also mission support grantees, this has to go beyond your normal programming. Okay, who scores? Community members. In our other panels, we have United Arts board members and Wake County appointees and staff. I try really hard to pick a panel of your peers, which is a little tricky to find people who know about a diverse communities who do not work with any of you. But that is our goal, because we want to have people who care deeply about the arts in Wake County, who are representative of a variety of demographic backgrounds. And so usually it's 5 to 7 different individuals from the community who'll be providing scores. The way it works is that each of them provides a score, then those scores get averaged. And generally, the people with the top scores are the ones who get funded. I say generally, always, that's how it works. We don't ever take someone with the bottom score. I realized that sounded, I tried to make this very mathematical so it doesn't feel like there's like panel magic happening on the back end. Okay, the deadline is May 1st, which is a Monday before midnight. At midnight, I'm not the one turning off the application. It is programmed to do that. So if you try to submit an application at 12:01 and it's closed, I'm so sorry. Like, you should start now. You should try not to miss that deadline because there's not a lot I can do for you after that point. And then if you receive a grant, notifications are emailed in late June. There'll be everything will be electronic. I do it through Adobe Sign, contracts and signatures. You will get your grant payment in one lump sum in July. And remember, the grant period is from July to June. So I am well aware that we are saying that your grant project period can start July 1st and you're not going to get your money until July. Keep that in mind. We have to wait for our money to come in before I can give it out, which is, you know, smart financial sense. And so just know that now. And then you will have a final report that'll be due next July. Okay. Questions?
Yeah, so this is kind of timely. Sarah has asked, does all project planning need to take place within the funding period?
No, it doesn't. That's a great question. I'm always asking when I'm applying for grants, I'm always asking that question because you might have already started planning right now, as long as the expenses that this grant would cover take place in that period.
Great. A new question. Will the people participating today receive a copy of this presentation?
Yes, I will send out a PDF of these slides and a link to the recording once Zoom gives it to me.
Anyone else? Anyone would like to raise their hand and ask a question? Community in Motion has their hand raised.
Hi, this is Robin with Commotion. So I'm trying to understand how I just threw my phone on the floor. The artist versus the audience representing the diverse communities. So for example, we have artists with disabilities and artists of color, and we work with populations that have disabilities and populations of color, and then also populations that are not of those. So is it more important that our project have the artists be from diverse populations and the audience can be whomever, or do we need to try and match the artist and the population?
Let me explain where I was coming from with that, and I think you'll understand. If you're a local theater company and you have this production of The Wiz, well, first of all, I think it's hilarious that The Wiz is the first musical that just popped into my mind, but whatever. You have The Wiz, and it's just like filled with like abled actors and singers and dancers. And you think that you can apply to this project to make it accessible. You want to add like closed captioning and an ASL interpreter, and you want to invite a bunch of like different community groups to come and watch the production. That wouldn't count because the artists that are participating are not or do not represent those communities. You're just doing something on top of what your normal thing is. So that, in my mind, that's about audiences. Now, what you're talking about is, so for sure, I want diverse artists. This is about getting diverse artists out into the community. If diverse audiences follow suit, which is honestly what a goal of this also, that is completely fine. But the goal should be about the artists first. Robin, did that make sense?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna stop sharing. Any other questions?
Yep, a new one's just come in. Where I know you had a slide earlier on in the program highlighting programs from last year, but someone is asking, is there a specific list that they could look at to see all that was funded last year?
It's on our website, but I think our website just lists the organizations, and I'm not 100% sure it says the specific projects, but at least you can see a list of the organizations. There were 16 funded projects this year.
And a new question, is the funding all or nothing? Or in other words, do you fund 100% of the request, or are there partial funds? How does that work?
That's a great question. We try to fund 100% of the request. Now, last year, the panel made a couple of choices that deviated from that goal a little bit, but generally it's all or nothing, because we know that for a project, unlike general operating support, you propose this project with a specific amount of money in mind, and our aim is to fully fund or not fund.
Anyone else like to raise their hand with a question? Reagan, one thing I thought of, I know I always get a lot of questions with my, when I use Submittable, is to talk about how it auto saves, but also you can save a draft versus hitting submit. I don't know if you want to share any tips about that with the group.
What Julia said, it auto saves, but you can also hit save. To get back to your draft, I think you just log into your Submittable account and you're able to get back in it that way. But with all things, I would recommend you working on a Word document first, because if you want me to review a draft and you want to have a meeting with me where I give you some feedback, I can't log into Submittable until you've submitted it for real. So I can't see anything. The only way I'm going to see it is if you email me like a Word document or a Google Doc or something that is a draft of what you're working on. So I always recommend doing that first. Anything else?
I don't see anything.
Okay.
Last
Well,
call.
I'm gonna hit stop record unless there are any questions.